Hello, and welcome back to the channel. It's puzzle time again with Sudoku Sleuth, and I'm really excited about yet another new puzzle and a different set of rules than we've seen before, which we'll get onto in a second. Now, I hope you've continued to enjoy the other videos I've been posting, particularly some Complete. Now, unfortunately, a day or so ago, I wasn't actually able to complete it in under a minute. Not really sure why I got stuck onto it, but I'm glad to be back on the normal track once again. But enough of that. Let's get on to Sudoku, which is why I think we're all here. So let's take a look at the rules for today's puzzle. Now, this puzzle is called Never Two Apart. And please, for the constructor, accept my apologies for butchering your name as I'm about to do now. I'm going to pronounce it as Sujoyku, maybe Sujoyku. And this puzzle has, the following set of rules. So normal Sudoku rules apply, which we've seen often on this channel, which means we need to apply the digits 1 to 9 every row, every column, and indeed every box. Now, what I thought was quite interesting about here is it says orthogonally adjacent cells. So orthogonal means they have to be essentially connected either vertically or horizontally in this plus sign, but not diagonal. That wouldn't count as orthogonally adjacent. Never differ by exactly 2. So for example, a 3 is never orthogonally adjacent to either a 1 or a 5. Now, I think this is the first time we're having this style of rule on the channel. Typically, and this is why the constructor mentions that this is somewhat unusual, they're usually consecutive digits are not allowed, and you end up with this fascinating way where even in such a sparsely populated grid such as this one, that it's surprisingly restricted if you're paying attention. So I'm really looking forward to today's puzzle. It's not as highly rated as some of the other ones that are out there, but I suspect I'm going to disagree with the rating of 80% and will probably give it a lot higher myself. We shall find out soon. Now, before we get started, those of you that are frequent visitors of the channel will be familiar by now that we are often solving Sudoku variant puzzles. And today is no exception, where we have this additional rule of no orthogonally adjacent digits never differ by exactly 2. And it allows us to complete Sudoku puzzles that are often empty, but today Sudoku was very generous in giving us a rather large number of digits. We've got 6, 9, 6, 12, 14 digits to get us started, which I think if they're strategically placed is probably enough to actually solve a very hard classical Sudoku. But thankfully, that's not what we have in front of us today. Now, as usual, if you want to play along, link will be in the description down below. Please do let me know how you get on. I immensely enjoy reading your comments. And with that said, let's restart the clock and see how we get on with today's puzzle. Now, the fact that it says exactly 2 apart, the first thing that occurred to me is this is about evens and odds. And I'll explain why that's the case. Essentially, this 1 is very restricted when it comes to 3. So you're essentially able to place any even digit around it without a problem, but clearly the 3 would cause a bit of an issue. So I think just for our sanity, what I'm going to do is color in all the odd digits to make it a little bit obvious where I need to pay a bit more attention. So essentially, if they have the same color, orange for odd, or blue for even, I guess blue is just to be something very polar opposite to orange, we just need to just double check that we haven't actually placed something that isn't allowed under today's rules. All right, let's be systematic about this. So let's take a look at 1. So you can see 1 can't be placed in here because of this one, but actually also on the 3, it forces the 1 in this column. Anything else? 1s are in here. Yeah, we can take down box 9. You can actually place a 1. Having the 3 here in the center is quite powerful. It eliminates all of these cells, plus this one, obviously, because it sees it in the column, and we actually can immediately place a 1 down there. So we know 1 has got to be in one of these 2 cells. and it has to be in one of these two cells as well. We don't really have enough about the other remaining boxes. Yeah. Let's take a look at 2s. Now 2s are only restricted if they're adjacent to the 4. Quite powerful, the 4 here is in the center, plus this 2 sees this cell. So we can actually place a 2 in box 1. We know therefore that the 2 is in one of these two cells in box 2. We don't know enough about box 6. We do know a little bit about box 9. And a bit more again about box 7. There's almost like a pattern emerging here that we get to find out a lot about the corner boxes, particularly 1, 3, and 9, a little bit about 7. And I imagine this is actually going to help us unwind the puzzle in a bit. I'm going to continue to maintain the color. I don't know how useful this will be, but I really want to avoid making an error that will be very difficult to spot otherwise. Right, 3s. Nothing obvious in here. Nothing obvious in any of these, really. Right, this 5 obviously tells us the 3 is up here. Therefore, the 3 is eliminated from these two rows. It's got to be, and this 5, so it's actually only restricted to these two cells in box 8. Can't be next to a 1. Not here. So yes, it is actually restricted in box 3. It will therefore be restricted in box 6 as well. And I think 3 can go in any of these without an issue. Yeah, we're continuing this pattern. Let's see how far we need to take it before we can actually start unwinding some of these conclusions. So 4 is actually quite restricted. So I'm immediately looking for, once you get beyond the first digit, like the 1 and the 2, now you're really getting onto more restricted digits because they're restricted by both 2 and 6 in the case of 4. So taking a look at the bottom box here, you can see all of these are restricted, forcing a 4 on this end, and therefore a 4 in here, but again, not next to the 6, so the 4 has to be in these two cells in box 4. And in these two cells in box 3, and therefore restricted to row 3 in box 2. We don't really know a lot more than this just yet. I'm still fairly confident we're on the right track, so we'll keep going up the digits. 5 next. Yeah, 5 is lovely, because you see 5 is restricted by 3 and 7. The 7, whenever you have one of these in the center, it eliminates so many options, and this 5 eliminates this option. So this has to be the 5. We have, yeah, we know where the 5 is in box 1. Therefore, the 5 is restricted in box 2. It's also restricted in box 8. And restricted in box 4. Restricted to one column in box 6. Still doesn't feel like an enormous amount of progress, but we'll keep going for now. Right, so we've done 5s, we need to do 6s. 6 is placed in box 9. Placed in box 1, which also places the 1 based on our pencil marks. 1 of 2 places in box 3. 1 of 3 in box 4. 1 of 2 in box 8. Again, this 4 here, it can't be orthogonally adjacent to it. And I think that's all the 6s we can place for now. Now, I want to go back and revisit this 1 that we've placed. Has it actually eliminated any of the possibilities for 1? Not really. That's disappointing. Let's take a look at the 7 for now. So 7, essentially we're placing 7 and 9 in here. This 9 tells us the 9 goes in there, 7 goes in there. These are not 7. Any of these can be a 7. These are not 7. 7 has to be on the right-hand column in box 6. 7 can't go with a 5, cannot go with a 9. It's restricted to one of two cells in box 7. And that's as far as we can take the 7 for the moment. Right, I think we're going to be able to really push this soon. Let's think about 9 for a second. So you see, 9 is already eliminated because the 7 eliminates all of these options. It's got to be placed in here. Based on the pencil marks, this has got to be a 3. This has to be a 4. 4, not a 5. This has to be a 6, and that's the remaining cell. That's an 8. Let's see where else 9 is restricted. So a little bit tricky to spot, but you cannot place a 9 in here. Essentially, if you place a 9 in this cell, you're left with a 7, which would make it orthogonally adjacent. So this line eliminates this cell. The two 7s eliminate 9 in here. So 9 has to be placed in this column, and now 9 has to be placed on the left-hand side. Not at all how I was expecting this to go. I was expecting by the time we got to 9 that it will really unravel itself. Maybe I'm missing something at this point. Let me just go back to coloring just to make sure I haven't actually missed anything. But I admit I did jump to 9 rather than look at 8. I really probably should have gone and had a look at 8 first. So 8, yeah, so that's an example. That's clearly going to be 8 cannot be here next to the 6. That joins the 2, 5 in here, but really it's a 2, 8, and the 5 has to be placed in here. 8 means it's in there with the 7s, so that's 7, 8 pair. That's the 2, that's the 9. 8 is eliminated from all of these. 8 has to be on this side. But in fact, I don't think we need to corner pencil mark anymore. We know that this is made up of 4, 8, and 7. This can't be a 7. This cannot be a 4. Let's replace these corner pencil marks as well. So this has to be 1, 4, and 9. This is not 1 or 4, so this is 9. Neither of these are a 9. That's a 1, 4 pair. What else do we need to place in here? So that's 3, 7, and 6 to complete the box. That cannot be a 6. That cannot be a 3. The rest seems... Ah, yes, that clearly cannot be a 7 either. So that has to be the 6. That's not a 6. And we're left with 2 odds here, 2 evens. 2 evens, I did say. And an odd. We don't know which is which just yet. Let's take a look in here. Have we missed anything as obvious? Not yet. Let's remove the corners and work through this as well. So we have 1, 5, and 6 to complete the column. That's not 6. It's not 1 either, so that's the 5. These are not 5. That's from 1 and 6. And there's nothing preventing us from placing any of these. This 5 tells us this is not a 7. That's the 8. That's the 4. That's the 7. That's not the 6. That's the 1. That's the 6. So we need to place 3, 9, and 2. So 2 can go in any of these. 9 can go in any of these. And 3, in fact, can go only here because of the 1. So this has to be the 9, making this a 2, 3 pair that we're not able to resolve just yet. But you can see we're making enormous progress now in this puzzle. But like I said, you do really need to pay attention to these styles of puzzles. Otherwise, you'll miss a large number of clues that allows you to basically quickly just make some progress. Um, we haven't looked at, we haven't tried to place 8 either in here. So 8 is eliminated this way. 8 is not there. 8 is down here. It's just not enough. Let's work through it. So have we restricted? I think there's just, we're not seeing essentially the kind of the wood through the trees. Just too many pencil marks. So that's a 4 in here. The 2 is red. The 8 is there. The 7 is there. Have we actually placed all the digits? Try to place the 2s. Yeah. The 3s, the 4s, 5, 6, 7. Is that really a naked single? And I'm just only noticing it now. So why can it not be a 2? Yeah. 3 can't be a 4 because it's next to 6. 5, 6. 7 cannot be next to the 9. This cannot be an 8. Why? Because it's next to the 6. So this is a naked single. This is a 1. That's not a 1. I'm going to remove all the... don't want to quite remove it, but okay. So let's take a look at... is this now the next naked single? This can only be a 3. So it can't be a 2. 3 is fine. 4 is restricted by this. 5, 6, 7, 8 can't be in here, and 9, yeah. Okay. Just seems like a whole bunch of naked singles that... surely there's an easier way of doing this than what I'm doing right now. It's all right, we'll keep going. If there isn't anything else that's obvious. It really doesn't seem like there is. Let's take a look at 1 for column 2 for a second. So I'm looking at this column. I suspect we can fully resolve this, but let's just keep looking elsewhere for the moment rather than systematically checking every single cell and see if there's a naked single. So where do we put 1s in column 2? This tells us it's not in here. It's already placed in the box. This tells us it's not in here. And actually this 3 tells us it's not in there. So 1 is fixed there. And we're pretty close to placing all the 1s at this point. What are the other cells that we need to place in this column? So we need a 2, 6, and 7. That's not 7. Sorry, not 7 actually. What are we missing? 8. That's not 2. That's not 8. That can be any of them. That's an odd. Let's take a look at this column next. I really do feel like I must be missing something that would just unwind this puzzle a lot more quickly than how painful I'm making it seem. So 1, 2, 3, we still need a 4. That's not in here, okay. 5 is also up there. That's not 4. 5 can be here. Can't be there. Could be here. 6. Still need the 7. And the 8. Let's just have a look at... so I think what I'm probably going to miss is sort of adjacencies. For example, we know that the 5 has to be up here in these two cells. See, neither of these could be a 7 now, because if you place a 7 in here, that would be a 5. 7 in there, that would be a 5. And they just cannot be adjacent to one another. Now, there isn't a similar restriction with the 4 and 8, unfortunately. This is in fact a 5 because we can't place an 8 in here. So that's not 5. We have 4, 8, 7, 4, 7, 8s. This could be either. This could be either. This can be any of them. Okay? Still feels like not as much progress as we should have at this point in the game. There you go. That's what I've been missing. So this cannot be a 3 because it's adjacent to a 5. So that's a 2, that's a 3. That's going to help us very quickly unwind a lot of this. That's a 2. Based on the pencil marks, that's going to be a 4. That's a 7. That's an 8. 8. 4 and 7. That's what I've been missing. Super. So we can now finish in probably box 4. So we still need to place a 2, 3, and 9. That's not 3. That's also not 3. So that's a 3. The 2, 9 pair, that 2 in box 6 tells us the order. And that's nearly all the boxes done except the center one. So let's just take a look at what do we have left in here. So we still need to place 1, 2, 3, not there, 4, 5, 6, which is not here, and 7 by the looks of things, which has to be in there. So that's not the 6, that's the 6. 3 and 7 both are allowed where they are. Right, we need to still place quite a few digits in here, particular quite a few even digits. So we need a 2, which is actually placed. So 2 is restricted, highly restricted. We still need to place an 8, and only the 8 is only allowed in there. And we still need to place a 7 and a 5. And there appears to be no real restrictions on those. Is that correct? Let's think this through. If that's a 5, that's a 7, that's an 8. If that's a 7, that's an 8, that's a 5. Can that be an 8? That would make this a 7 and this a 5. So all of that, sorry, 3, 7 is down here. So these are not 7. That's 5, that's 8, that's 7, that's 8. Clearly must be a little bit tired today if I'm not seeing some very obvious Sudokus. 1, 2, 3. We need a 4, which have to be in there. Can't be next to the 2. And we also need a 9. Can't be next to the 7, so it's in there. That's not 4. All of that appears possible. That's the 4. Okay. Right, so this box is essentially what's going to help us unwind it all at this point. And I'm going to take a look at this row, given it's the most complete. So we still need to place a 4, which can't be next to the 2. That's probably going to help us unwind it all now. Yeah, let's keep going. Do we know anything else? And this has to be a 3. That tells us that's a 7. 3, 7, 3. This the 2 at the bottom that we've placed earlier tells us that's the 8 and the 2. And now we can probably finish this very quickly from here. So we still need a 6 and a 7. And we need 5, 8, and 9, and we can place all of these with just normal Sudoku 8. And if I've not made any mistakes, that's the 9. So 21 minutes. And I think aside from missing this 2 and 3 in quite early in the puzzle, where the 3 couldn't have been adjacent to these 5s, that was a pretty good solve. And I think you can see how this orthogonally adjacent restrictions can very quickly allow you to make some conclusions that seem really unusual. Earlier in around here when we were able to place the 9 and the 7s extremely easily just because of where these center squares are, and just the amount of restrictions that it places on the rest of the square for adjacent numbers is phenomenal. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's puzzle and looking forward to having you back for the next one. See you for now.